Hi friends, welcome to Anand Science Academy. In this video, let's discuss one of the most important topics of the chapter evolution, that is Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. In population genetics, the Hardy-Weinberg principle, which is also known as the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, Hardy-Weinberg model, Hardy-Weinberg theorem or law, states that allele and genotype frequencies in a population will remain constant from generation to generation in the absence of other evolutionary influences. Only in a hypothetical situation the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium can exist. But in nature, evolution is going on in a low pace. Now let's see the mathematical expression of this Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. P square plus 2pq plus q square equal to 1. Here, P square represents the homozygous dominant condition. PQ represents the heterozygous condition. Q square represents the homozygous recessive condition. Always this will be equal to 1 according to Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. As we have seen already, Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium can exist in a population in the absence of evolutionary influences. But in nature, there are some factors known to affect Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. Let's see them one by one. First one, gene migration or gene flow. Next, genetic drift, mutation, genetic recombination, and natural selection. These 5 factors are known to affect Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. How it happens? Let's see. First, let's understand what is gene migration or gene flow. Transfer of genetic material from one population to another population is known as gene migration or gene flow. Let's see few examples. Blue-eyed people from Sweden moved to a small town in Mexico where people all have brown eyes. When they mate, some of their children now have blue eyes. That is, in a population of brown-eyed people, now few people with blue eyes are seen. This is because of gene migration or gene flow. Here is another example. Honeybees carry pollen grains from one population of flowers to another population. Because of this, the genes or alleles are transferred from one population to another population. This is also an example of gene migration or gene flow which affects the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. Genetic drift. Genetic drift is a mechanism of evolution in which allele frequencies of a population change over generation due to chance. Consider a group of 12 red beetles. They live, let's assume, in some bushes with green leaves. Their population will grow by sexual reproduction and therefore can generate variation. Let's imagine also that crows eat these beetles. The more beetles the crows eat, the fewer beetles are available to reproduce. Now, Let us think about some different situations that can develop in this beetle population. Let us assume a color variation arises during reproduction so that there is one beetle that is green in color instead of red. This beetle, moreover, can pass the color on to its progeny so that all its progeny beetles are green. Crows cannot see green colored beetles on the green leaves of the bushes and therefore cannot eat them. What happens then? The progeny of green beetles is not eaten while the progeny of red beetles continues to be eaten. As a result, there are more and more green beetles than red ones in the beetle population. In a second situation, again, a color variation arises during reproduction, but now it results in a beetle that is blue in color instead of red. This blue beetle can also pass on the color to its progeny so that all its progeny beetles are blue. Crows can see blue colored beetles in the green leaves of the bushes as well as they can see red ones and therefore can eat them. What happens initially? In the population, as it expands, there are a few blue beetles, but most are red. But at this point, let's assume an elephant comes by and stamps on the bushes where the beetles live. This kills most of the beetles. By chance, the few beetles that have survived are mostly blue. The beetle population slowly expands again, but now the beetles in the population are mostly blue because the beetles that died because of the stamping of the elephant were mostly red. This happened by chance. It is obvious that in both situations, what started out as a rare variation came to be a common characteristic in the population. In other words, the frequency of an inherited trait changed over generations. Since genes control traits, we can say that the frequency of certain genes in a population changed over generations. This is the essence of the idea of evolution. But there are interesting differences too in the two situations. In the first case, the variation, that is the color variation, green beetle, became common because it gave a survival advantage. That is, the green beetles cannot be located or seen by the crows. So it was an advantage for the green beetles. In other words, it was naturally selected. The green color variation given a survival advantage to the beetles. We can see that the natural selection is exerted by the crows. The more crows there are, the more red beetles would be eaten. And the more the proportion of green beetles in the population would be. As more and more red beetles are eaten, green beetles multiply. Thus, natural selection is directing evolution in the beetle population. It results in adaptations in the beetle population to fit their environment better. In the second situation, that is the appearance of blue beetle, the color change gave no survival advantage. Instead, it was simply a matter of accidental survival of beetles of one color that changed the common characteristic of the resultant population. The elephant would not have caused such major havoc in the beetle population if the beetle population had been very large. So, accidents in small populations can change the frequency of some genes in a population, even if they give no survival advantage. This is the notion of genetic drift, which provides diversity without any adaptations. The next factor that affects Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is mutation. A mutation is a change in the DNA sequence of an organism. Mutations can result from errors in DNA replication during cell division, exposure to mutagens, or a viral infection. Another factor is genetic recombination. Genetic recombination occurs when genetic material is exchanged between two different chromosomes or between different regions within the same chromosome. The process occurs naturally and can also be carried out in the lab. Recombination increases genetic diversity in sexually reproducing organisms. Genetic recombination occurs naturally during meiosis. Here is an illustration of genetic recombination which occurs during prophase 1 of meiosis, where the non-sister chromatids of the homologous chromosomes exchange their segments. The next factor is natural selection. Natural selection is the process through which populations of living organisms adapt and change. Individuals in a population are naturally variable, meaning that they are all different in some ways. This variation means that some individuals have traits better suited to the environment than others. Let's understand this with an example. A population of mice has moved into a new area where the rocks are dark. Due to natural genetic variation, some mice are black while others are tan. Few of the mice are eaten by birds. Tan mice are more visible to the predatory birds than black mice. Thus, tan mice are eaten at higher frequency than black mice. Only the surviving mice reach reproductive age and leave offspring. Because black mice had a higher chance of leaving offspring than tan mice, the next generation contains a higher fraction of black mice than the previous generation. In this case, the color variation which gives survival advantage is selected in nature. Here is another example. Peacock females pick their mate according to the male's tail. The ones with largest and brightest tail mate more often. Today, because most breeding males have large bright tails, it is rare to find males that do not have bright feathers. This is because tail characteristics are passed from adult breeding peacocks to their offspring. Here we have another example. As humans moved from rural areas to urban areas and started living in cramped quarters, disease spread quickly through the population. Only those humans with strong immune systems survived. As they reproduced, their offspring tended to be born with immune systems that made it possible for them to survive in a densely populated environment. Understand what is founder effect? The founder effect is a special case of genetic drift occurring when a small group in a population splinters off from the original population and forms a new one. The new colony may have less genetic variation than the original population. In population genetics, the founder effect is the loss of genetic variation that occurs when a new population is established by a very small number of individuals from a larger population. It was first fully outlined by Ernst Mayr in 1942. As a result of the loss of genetic variation, the new population may be distinctively different both genotypically and phenotypically from the parent population from which it is derived. In extreme cases, the founder effect is thought to lead to the speciation and subsequent evolution of new species. Here is the simple illustration of the founder effect. In the figure shown, the original population has nearly equal numbers of blue and red individuals. The three smaller founder populations show that one or the other color may predominate due to random sampling of the original population. Let's see an example of founder effect in human population. Amish. The Amish are a Christian group in North America. Eastern Pennsylvania is home to the Amish, who provide a striking example of the founder effect. It is estimated that about 200 individuals that immigrated from Germany founded their community. The Amish typically marry from within their own community and are isolated so that genetic mutations tend to persist. For example, polydactyly-possessing extra fingers or toes is a common symptom of Ellis-van Creveld syndrome. The syndrome is a rare disorder that also is characterized by dwarfism and sometimes congenital heart defects. Due to the founder effect, Ellis-van Creveld syndrome is much more prevalent among the Amish population. Now let's discuss what are the different ways in which natural selection operates. Natural selection can lead to stabilization, in which more individuals acquire mean character value. Here is an example. Robins typically lay 4 eggs. An example of stabilizing selection. Larger clutches may result in malnourished chicks, while smaller clutches may result in no viable offspring. So, it is an example of stabilizing natural selection. Natural selection can lead to directional change, that is, more individuals acquire value other than the mean character value. Here is the example. Light colored peppered moths are better camouflaged against a pristine environment. Likewise, dark colored peppered moths are better camouflaged against a sooty environment. Thus, as the Industrial Revolution progressed in 19th century in England, the color of the moth population shifted from light to dark, an example of directional selection. The third way of natural selection can lead to disruption or diversifying selection. That means more individuals acquire peripheral character value at both ends of the distribution curve. For example, in a hypothetical population, grey and Himalayan rabbits, that means mixture of grey and white, these two colors are better able to blend with a rocky environment than white rabbits, resulting in diversifying selection. That is, the two colors, grey color and Himalayan color rabbits, increase in number than white color population. Hope this video is helpful to understand the Hardy-Weinberg principle. Let's meet in the next video with another interesting topic. Until then, keep preparing. All the best.